Time to go through the papers this morning. I'm sure it won't be lively at all. Joined again by Dawn Neeson and Mike Parry, regulars on the show. Let's start, Mike, with Only Fools and Horses. Page 3 of The Guardian.
Yes.
Famed for its literary work.
Yeah, this is a great story because it recognises Only Fools and Horses as a true literary product, a literary work, OK? Now, this has been a court case, and what happened is a company set up called Only Fools, brackets Kushti, Dying Experience, and what they did was they got actors to pretend to be the characters in Only Fools and Horses, and I don't know whether you were a fan of it for years, but I was, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was an interactive experience. You're eating and dining while people dressed like, you know, Del Boy and Boise were walking around you and making jokes. Anyway, the estate of the original writer, John Sullivan, a great man, he's the guy who invented it and wrote all the scripts, they had challenged this and said, you're stealing the identity, and it all depended on whether or not the judge would say, is this a literary work? So the judge had to take a box set of Only Fools and Horses home for the weekend. Honestly, he watched at least 3 episodes and he came back into court and said, this is definitely a literary work. You can't go around imitating Only Fools and Horses with your dining experience. And I think that's a great victory for one of the greatest TV productions, really, of the last 50 years. I'm very pleased for it.
Well, yeah, I think you're right in terms of legally how it stands, but I tell you what, it's the greatest form of flattery.
It is.
Yeah,
isn't it? It is. And also, I'm sure many of us might have worked with people like John Challis, OK? I worked with them a number of times. I mean, he was such a great guy and so different to the character he portrayed on TV.
Yeah, but I tell you what I loved about him is he's totally different.
Yes.
If you asked him to do a line or two, he'd do it.
Oh, absolutely. You know, Marlene! You know, I always got him to shout that whenever I was working with him. And it just, the sheer genius of all the actors and characters involved. So I'm just thrilled that, as you quite rightly say, the flattery of it all is that it's been recognised as an absolute quality product that has to be protected.
Well, what is the definition of literacy? It's something that's written that is enjoyed,
Yep.
and so how do you define it? It doesn't have to be snooty, does it?
No.
The problem I have with this, it's a victory for that, but it's
Yeah.
also a defeat for fun.
Well,
It was fun doing it. I mean, we did the 40 Towers one, which
Yes.
again could come under the
Yeah.
same classification.
Yeah.
And it is really
Yeah, but Dawn, my view is it was genius. You know, Only Fools and Horses was genius. Why should somebody just set up a little dining club and imitate everything from Fools and Horses? It wasn't their creation. They don't deserve to be making commercial money out of imitating Only Fools and Horses. No, it doesn't. If you wrote a great TV series, supposing you wrote Downton Abbey, Dawn, OK, and I'm sure you're very capable of doing it.
It's not my class, love.
And then all of a sudden, somebody set up a little cafe somewhere and called it, you know, Downton Towers or something like that. I mean, they're stealing your copyright. I think it's a great victory, and I'm glad it's happened.
Let us know your views on that. Let's talk about trigger warnings, Dawn. This is in the staff.
Not that we have any in the studio with us this morning, do we, Isabel?
Sorry, is that a dig?
It is a dig. We're out of touch with the viewers.
Yes, absolutely.
Listeners.
Any case, it's the front page of the Daily Star, having a bit of fun, as it is wont to do, and it is basically that I love the phrase woke university bosses have warned students studying Egyptian mummies, archaeology, that they will or might encounter human remains and should be prepared for this. I'm not making this up, it's a proper story. Yes, this is archaeology undergraduates at the University of York got a string of content warnings, as they are called these days, to prepare them for displays of ancient bodies as part of the institution's mummification module. This is the point of the course, isn't it? If you are studying archaeology, you're digging old dead things up, looking at old dead things. I'm not looking at you, Mike, in any way, shape or form.
No, please don't.
This is right. So, history expert Professor Alan Sked. It was yet another example of our British universities being he can't even say it.
Infantilization.
Thank you very much. That word. It's not so long ago, Glasgow University warned its theology students that a course on Christ ended with a violent episode called the crucifixion. These are university students. These clever people.
Do you think that actually what's happening is they're trying to warn them beware of the curse of Tutankhamun. Because, of course, the people who opened Tutankhamun's tomb all died, didn't they, within a few years? So maybe it's a sort of nod and a wink to, if you go around digging up mummies in Egypt, you could come to a sticky end.
We do live in a world where a packet of peanuts has "this may contain peanuts" on the outside.
And Walt Disney films and cartoons come with trigger warnings as well.
Talking of what things contain, Mike, you've chosen the story, page 23 of the Mail. And look, where are we now? Thursday since the Jubilee. We're still talking about the royal children.
Yes, we are.
Mike Tyndall's, we all saw in that famous picture at the weekend, the royal box, telling
that's right.
naughty little Prince Louis, I'm watching you.
That's right.
What's his assessment on what their behaviour was down to?
This is so interesting, because I think this would cause a bit of talk within the royal family. What Mike Tyndall's saying is, by the way, I think Mike Tyndall is the best royal, him and Zara. Do you see the way they linked arms as they went up the steps at St Paul's? They're a real close couple. They've got 3 kids themselves. He was sitting next to Boris Johnson during this celebration, eating a bar of chocolate. You know, the Prime Minister did want a bit of chocolate and all that. So I think he's a very natural guy. But, of course, the guy who stole the show was Louis, who's said to be, effervescent and friendly.
The 4-year-old.
The 4-year-old. But Dawn and I have agreed, in fact, it was Dawn's suggestion, perhaps Louis is just a little brat.
I agree. I think that's cheeky as anything.
And the point is, Mike Tyndall is saying here, they were on a sugar high. Now, to me, that's criticism of the parenting skills of Louis'
hang on a
isn't it?
minute. As a mother of a 4-year-old, I'm telling you try and get a 4-year-old to sit still for multiple hours with the world's cameras trained on them.
But Mike Tyndall's actually saying he was allowed to have too many sugary sweets.
I was probably trying to bribe them to sit still. Honestly, I wouldn't have anything worse.
I would have been in real trouble.
This is what I was going to say to you, Stephen. I think we come from a similar background on this one. If I'd have told my mum to shut up and thumb my nose at her, I would have sat down for a week, I tell you.
You know what? Same here, but I'm telling you, my children have more spirit than any wild animal you'll ever see. And it's easy to say it's just so easy to say. You don't get given the kids you think you're going to get, and you do your best
with vodka out of their diets.
I'm telling you, I have to say full respect to Catherine and William.
No, but they were nipping off into the back room, the kids, and unwrapping another sweet, another boiled sweet and all that. All of a sudden, they're hyper, and Mike Tyndall made a point of it. So I think there could be a discussion inside the royal family. He said it on one of his podcasts. He said it on the podcast, which is called The Good, the Bad and the Rugby.
Mike Parry, how many sweets have you had this morning? Exactly.
How many what, sorry?
Sweets have you had?
No sweets.
No.
Gave up sweets when I got diabetes. Gave up chocolate, gave up sweets, gave up everything. And I will live forever.
He's naturally like this.
He is naturally like this.
What do you mean? A bit harsh.
What's the Telegraph saying about a religious mob?
Oh, right, OK. This is the story that's been rumbling on all week. It is, again, cancel culture. This is the film that has been recently pulled from Cineworld, It's a film about the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad, and involved a petition, but more than a petition, to get it pulled off the cinema screens. And there was a group of very aggressive people outside the cinema and making threats to the people putting the film on. So Cineworld have agreed, bowed down to pressure, censorship, mob rule basically, and pulled the film from release. Now it's a film that had the people campaigning against it have said it was blasphemous. We don't have a law of blasphemy in England. We do in Northern Ireland still, but not in England. And heaven forbid we go that way. No pun intended, by the way. But it's a very, and this is an interview with Dame Sarah Khan, the government's independent advisor on social cohesion and resilience, and she had said quite rightly, it's a very slippery slope to go down. If we allow mob rule, whatever your religion, to dictate what other people can and can't read or see at the cinema, it is a dangerous precedent we're setting here. And it's like, it's also in a similar area, because this is in Yorkshire, what happened to the teacher in that school in Batley, Yorkshire.
Still in hiding.
He's still in hiding a year on, Isabel, for simply teaching children a lesson that was not offensive and not blasphemous, because we don't have that in this country. I mean, the kind of countries that do have strict blasphemy rules are also the sort that put homosexuals to death and women have no rights whatsoever. And it's not a road we need to go.
I mean, the Satanic Verses brought all this out into the open, didn't it? Do you remember the book, Satanic Verses? It ended up with, I've forgotten the name of the author.
He ended up
in exile for 10 years with a permanent team of protectors because he was actually threatened with being killed. It was a religious decision. He must be killed. A fatwa, absolutely.
And still lives in fear, and his family to this day.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's talk money. In the Mail, Mike.
Yeah, I love money.
And Blair, who, in my mind, is still about 14.
I went to university with you and Blair. Just an anecdote. We used to see him everywhere, walking around, bless him, quite often on his own, which is not fair to say, but always with a with an orange Sainsbury's bag. He looked like he didn't have 2 pennies to rub together. How times have changed.
How times have changed. He's 38, he's not 14, but I think Ewan Blair was the one who was found slumped drunk, wasn't he? In Sloane Square.
He was.
Yeah, that's right. After I think he was 14, after having a big session. But anyway, look, I take my hat off to this guy. Tony Blair's eldest son, that's Ewan, is in line for a £100 million windfall after a tech business he founded 6 years ago has been valued at £1.4 billion. It will take his wealth to an accumulated £420 million. My attitude to that is, good luck to you, son. You seem to have done very well. People will say, well, he couldn't have done it without his father. Well, a lot of us couldn't do things without our parents and help from our parents.
But it's interesting that his business is actually going against one of his father's.
Absolutely. It's putting money into an apprenticeship firm called Multiverse. You're absolutely right. And it's just grown and grown and grown. But I mean, do you remember it was Peter Mandelson who said when they got into power, we are very relaxed about anybody becoming filthy rich. Do you remember? That's a quote from Mandelson. Well, he seems to have taken that to heart. His parents are worth about £500 million in the accumulated properties that they've bought and developed since Mr. Blair stood down as Prime Minister. So they're a very, very wealthy family, but I don't have any wealth envy. I wish more people did this. I wish more people created wealth because we have to have the economy expanding all the time in order to provide a society that can look after things like the National Health Service, and this boy's showing away, and I think he should be praised.
I think it's particularly lovely that it's going against his father's flagship policy where every youngster is encouraged to go to university.
Education.
Profoundly wrong.
Yes,
just some
I agree.
children, myself included, are just not suitable for university. And the apprenticeship scheme, I think, is a brilliant thing and should be brought back for many industries.
Let's look to the future, Dawn, to finish off with in the Star, because for the last couple of decades now, our youngsters have been getting taller.
They have, indeed.
Are we going into reverse now?
We evidently, according to this report in the Daily Star, so that must be true, global warming could turn us into a race of pint-sized humans in bid to stop us becoming extinct.
Why?
It's a common evolutionary action when there is a spike in global temperature, say boffins. I'm not sure what a boffin actually is, but say boffins, and we could end up with a planet full of little people like Danny DeVito. Who's so rude.
Yeah,
so rude. He's quite petite. It's like, and sort of like many of our cousins and ancestors endured global warming, and many of them did so by shrinking in size. Evidently, the smaller you are, the more likely you are to survive an increase in temperatures, and it is true.
All I can picture is just like Danny DeVito.
Planet of Danny's everywhere. I find the height thing really fascinating. Just someone who spent a lot of time in Holland. I mean, in the last 150 years, the average height there has increased so much. They weren't always the nation of really tall people until about 150 years ago.
That's right.
That's directly linked to the fact they have this love of milk and calcium
absolutely,
and diet.
And healthy lifestyle. Dawn has deliberately picked this story because she's having a go at me, right? We took a picture. Excuse me. We took a picture and put it out on social media before we came in. Dawn is wearing 5-inch heels, okay? And she's slightly taller than me anyway.
Dawn is a supermodel.
I'm now being mocked as a midget on social media. And when Dawn saw this story, Survival of the Littlest, she thought, that's it, I'm going to stick the boot in on Mike Parry this morning. I know it. Yeah. I've known this woman for a long time, you know.
Such a thing, honestly. I mean.
Yes, typical. Look, we've got to leave it there. Mike, Dawn, it has been a joy.
It has.
Thank you very much indeed.
You said that without even...
No, we agreed on something this hour. So that's fine. You're back in the fold, Dawn. You're back in the fold.
Thank you so much. I've been uncancelled.
We'll see. We don't do cancelling. Well, not really.